There are two major trends in the evolution of the information space right now. The first one is the rise of AI technologies and generative AIs and LLMs, which make it much easier to both produce content and also potentially disseminate it. A second major trend is the new ownership of some of the social media platforms, which has had important repercussions of the information space, mainly because of the firing of most of the trust and safety teams that were previously working on making sure that the environment is safe online. There have been a lot of improvements in the way platforms deal with the content, and I think there are still many more to expect in the coming years with the DSA. There is a key challenge, which is the firing of trust and safety teams that make it more difficult for social media platforms to monitor some of the content that is on their services. A second main issue that will rise is the question of who decides what is true online and the issues with what is seen as potentially censorship. This is a debate that was very prominent in the United States and that is gaining traction in Europe as well. The idea is to say that the people who work on disinformation studies and that defend objectivity, in some regards, have a political agenda too. And the challenge is for the whole field to realize and potentially communicate on that political dimension of the work they do. To understand this, it's interesting to go back at what some sociologists have called the social construction of scientific facts, which is basically to say that even in science, where there is a form of agreed upon objectivity, the construction of facts have a history, and actors that participate in that history have interests of some form or another. And this applies to the field of disinformation studies and to anyone who tries to defend objective or universal truth, because you need to understand always the context from which you speak when you enunciate truth and objectivity. Part of the answer as to how this vision of disinformation changes when looking at it from outside of the West is understanding that very history of disinformation studies, which have been unfolding mainly in the West. So when you apply some of the conclusions that have been drawn from that field outside of the West, in some cases, it doesn't lead to the best conclusions. One fact is the idea that, for instance, public media play a central role in democracies and should be protected by governments and by people looking at the information ecosystem. In many places, public media also serve a political agenda and spread propaganda, and this comes to question the efficacy of the whole discourse on disinformation studies outside of the West. To me, one of the biggest challenges to come is the question of the financing of journalism. Journalism has been seeing its revenues being cut quite dramatically with the rise of the internet and of social media platforms, and this has questioned their viability on the long term. This is problematic because most studies on media and democracy stress the importance of the media in making democracy work. So the question is how we can continue financing journalism work and quality journalism in an age where information becomes even freer than it used to be with the rise of generative AI.